few of you here, so we'll make a start. So I'll just quickly run through what I'm going to use, and I thought I would go with the double tulip bloom because it's on television next Monday. That's what I'm using today. This is the stamp set, fabulous little stamp set, and I'm using this sentiment off it as well, fabulous friend. I won't put my stamps too far away. On one of the other samples that I've already done, I've used the daisy corner and I've cut it out and I've embossed it, but I'm not doing that one today. I just wanted to have a play with that, so I thought I'd use it on a sample. I've also used the large foliage. Now anybody that knows me, that's watched me before, knows that this is one of my absolute favourite die sets. It is so useful, it's incredible, but they are really quite big dies. I mean, look at that. This one here particularly is as big as my hand lengthwise, and this is my favourite. These two here are my absolute favourites, but it's such a versatile set and you can use it with anything. I mean, if you haven't got that set, you could use the essential foliage that came with the stencils. That's also a good set to use. And then I've used the bubble squares just to give me my backgrounds, my bases to sort of do my cards on. So what I thought we'd do first off was make our own background. Okay, so I've already done my background inking because I wanted this to be bone dry really. So I've used Strawberry Sundae and I've used Surf's Up, and I've just brushed over with my bijou brushes and just random. Totally doesn't matter if there's bits that you can see heavier than others, doesn't matter, and the blending bit is perfect as well. Okay, so what I did on the two that I've already done was mainly stencil, but I thought afterwards, actually you don't have to just use stencils, you could use stamps as well. And this sort of technique is good for if you've made a card and then you look for some background papers and actually you've got nothing that suits. So because you're using inks, you can use those same inks to make your own background. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do today. So I've reached out some stencils, so I've just reached out a variety. You can use anything, any stencils you've got, any stamps you've got, doesn't matter what they are, you can use anything. Okay, so I've just got a variety and I'll use whatever I come to, but I also thought I could use the texture stamps and maybe the bubble wrap stamp as well. I was going to use the bubble wrap stencil, but I thought, well, I could use the stamp as well. It's not going to make any difference, is it? So I thought I'd use the stamp as well. So first off, I'm just going to put, I think, some stars in the background. Okay, and I think what I'll do is I'll just go down this blue piece here. All right, now I could go blue, I could go red, not sure. I'll go red because then it might make it purple, mightn't it? And it might just look that little bit different. So let's find my red bijou brush and we're just going to go over the top. I'm not taping it down at all. I'm just going to go across these stars just really quickly, not paying too much attention to how deep the colour is, whether it fills all the stars or not. Just, that's it. Okay, so that's my first bit. Then it's just a case of deciding what stencils you want to use and what colours you want to use. So I think we'll go blue through onto the red, just to be different. Where's my blue one? And this is just, it's just a way of losing yourself for, I don't know, half an hour or so, and just going with the flow, just adding a little bit of interest in the back of your design. I like that, that's cool, that is. I'm not going to go the same down here, I'm going to go with a different stencil. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some stamping over the top. So I'll come back in with my Strawberry Sundae and I'm going to go red on red here, just because I can really. And if you want it really deep, you could use your stencil brush instead of the bijou brush, because the stencil brush will give you more colour in a concentrated area. So you could use your stencil brushes as well. See, that's not as prominent as this, but that's absolutely fine. It will be what it will be. And the one thing I'd say is, while you're doing this, don't take too much notice of what it looks like while you're working on it, because it'll change. And the two that I did yesterday in preparation for today, the one I looked at and I thought, no, I don't like that, I'm not going to use that. But I've come to it today, so I've said this to you before, haven't I? I've come to it today and I thought, actually, do you know what? I really quite like that. So I'm pleased that I didn't sort of bin it. Now, this stencil was one that Lisa bought out right in the very, very early days. So when I did the one I did yesterday, I did the words as they look here. But what I thought I'd do today is go a little bit off-piste and do them in a different direction, because it's just a random background, you know. It's not anything sort of too posh, too definite. I know what I mean. So I thought, I'll just mask this off and then I can just do individual words, and there's some lovely words on here. This one's memory, and I'm going to go in with a brush, one of my stencil brushes, and again I'm sticking with the same colour, blue and red, and I'm going in. See, this is quite intense now because I'm using a stencil brush and it's filling those little apertures on those words beautifully, so it's really going to stand out. Oops, see, I like that. Okay, so we're going to go with dream, I think, and we're going the other way with dream, and I'm going to go with red on this one. So I'll use these. If you've got masking sheets are great. If you haven't, just use post-it notes. Good old post-it notes. It's what we all started with, isn't it? And they're perfect for what they do. So I'm just filling in this one word. I think I'm only using 2 on this one. I used 3 on the one I did yesterday, which you'll see in a second. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So I'll just go with that. Now I'm going to do some stamping, okay? So I'm going to take my bubble wrap and I'm just going to add a little bit of ink. What colour shall I go with? I'll go with blue. And again, I'm using the blending ink, not the pigment ink, because I want that sort of chalky-like finish on it. I don't want it to stand out too much, okay? And I'm going straight over the top of this. I'm not worried what it hides, what it doesn't hide or anything. So I'll go straight over the top. It might hide the word, might not, don't mind. Okay. Yeah, I like that. So now I'm going to go down here, and I think I'm going to use one of the texture stamps. Now, you know I like my little splatty stamp. I'm not going to put it on a block. I'm literally just sticking it to my fingers, really. Now, what colour shall I do? I'll go red. I'll go red on red, and a little bit over the blue. I just think this is such good fun, and it just gives you a background that's totally different to anything else. Nobody else is going to have the same card, right? So if you send a card to somebody, you might have the same flowers that somebody else has sent, because obviously Lisa's that popular that loads of people are using her stuff, but it's going to look different to everybody else's because your background is unique, and that's just fantastic. Okay, so I've done my inking and my stenciling and my stamping, and I'm happy with what I've done. Okay, so I'm going to lose my mixed media mat and I'm going to bring in my ultimate, because I want to just stamp this sentiment before I go on to do the flowers. So I'm putting my sentiment up here, and like I said, I'm using Fabulous Friend, and I'm going to stamp it in black because I want it to stand out. Okay, so I just pop my magnets down here so as this doesn't move. Pick my stamp up, take my Cloud 9 black because it's brilliant. Preferably don't stamp all over your alternate form. It's not really very good, is it? I'll just take that off there because I don't want that getting anywhere where it shouldn't be. And the beauty, of course, of using your platform is that if it doesn't stamp right first time, you can re-ink it and re-stamp it, which I think I will, only because it's stamping onto that ink, and I want it to stand out a little bit more. So I'm just going to give it a double whammy. Yeah, I like that. So that's my background. Okay, I'm not using this one today. I just wanted to show you how quick and easy it is just to make a background. So that's my background, and I'm going to use this with the double tulip bloom that I'm going to stencil in a second. But I've already got all my card ready to do today, so all my stenciling and my cutting and everything else is already done for the card that I'm doing today. Okay, so let's get stuck into the double tulip bloom. Now there's only 4 stencils with these because they came out with stamps and everything. They only had 4 stencils, and the 4 stencils are fine. I do think that some of the later ones that Lisa's done with more stencils are brilliant, but these are just as good. All right, so I'm going to start with I'm only doing the flower. I'm not doing the whole of the stencil because I don't need the rest. I just want the flower. So I'm going to take off most of my ink because this red is quite juicy, and then I'm just going to use my bijou brush because again I think it gives you such a beautiful coverage. I'm going to take my ink off my stencil rather than the ink pad because I don't want to add any more ink, and then I'm just going to come along the edges just to give those edges a little bit of definition. Okay, now you can see here these are the leaves, and the leaves are obviously going to be green, but I don't want to use the woodland moss for the base of the leaves. I want to use juicy pineapple and surf's up. So we're going in with our stencil brush and juicy pineapple. Gosh, there's a lot of you here today. Thank you for joining me. Okay, so I've put my juicy pineapple on as my base, and then I'm going in with surf's up over the top because I just think this makes such a beautiful green. And because I've used surf's up already on this brush, I'm not going to add any ink to start with. I'm just going to see what green it gives me without adding any more ink. I might just be happy with what's already on the brush. I think I am. Yeah, I am. I think that's smashing. I think it's a really nice blue. This surf's up blue I think is my favourite. It's my favourite blue. It's not my favourite ink. I've got lots of favourite inks. Actually, all 10 of my favourite inks. I think they're fabulous. Okay, so we've got, I just look what other leaf bits. Yeah, I'm going to go here with woodland moss now, right? Because I've used my yellow and my blue, I want to actually have a little bit of differentiation between the sort of the base of the leaf and the main sort of shadowy parts on the leaf, if you know what I mean. So I've added this woodland moss. Again, it's a beautiful green, but I didn't want it as my total base colour because for me it was a little bit dark for what I wanted. Yeah, like that. So I'll leave that there. Now I'm going in again with my strawberry sundae, but I'm going to use my stencil brush this time. Take off a little bit of the ink because I don't want it to be overly red, but I want it to stand out against the background that I've already done. Okay, I do love these stencil brushes. They're just such a beautiful bristle on them, and they really reach into those apertures beautifully. Okay, yeah, happy with that. So then we're going in with number 3. Now on number 3, I've only got a little bit on the leaves, and I'm actually going in with the grey on here, so I'm using cobblestones. I'll just find my grey brush, and these are just ever so tiny little sort of veins on the leaves. And I've said to you before, I always use the grey because I just think it gives the leaf a little bit of depth. Okay, so I'm just adding that grey in there. I think there is another stencil that's got a little bit of detail for the leaves, and I shall use grey on that as well. Okay, there's my lid. Right, so we're coming back in on our flower. Now I've done 2 layers of red, and I want to add a little bit of a different colour. So I'm going to come in with the spiced plum, because I do love this purple, and I think it'll just add a little bit of difference to this flower. But I'm not going in too heavy, so again I've taken a lot of the ink off my brush, and I take my ink off the stencil rather than off my ink pad. I will go in and re-ink in a second, because it's not all going to fill my flower, but it's just such a beautiful combination. I don't think you can beat pink and purple together, and hopefully this purple will just give you that little bit of interest on the flower, so that it's not all one shade. I mean, no flower is one shade of colour, is it? Even if it's a red rose, it's not just a red rose, is it? So just add a little bit of another colour just to give yourself some interest on there. Now that should be purple as well, I think. Right, might use that again in a minute. I like that. I think it just gives it enough of a difference, enough of an interest to make it stand out. So again, we've got little bits of vein down here on the leaves, and again I'm going to go in there with the grey. This cobblestones is such a useful colour to have. Going a little bit darker on this grey, but you can see how quick this is, can't you? It's just such a satisfying thing to do. You could lose yourself in stenciling, I think, if you wanted to. So again, I'm going in with the purple. I'm going to go slightly heavier here, because this is my last bit of sort of shading on these flowers. So this is sort of probably be at the front of your flower, and I want this to be the deepest colour. So just go in and add that, and that will be our stenciling finished. And then we can just stamp the stamp over the top. Okay, I like that. It's different. It's a completely different flower to what I would normally do, so I'm really quite happy with that. So let's take the actual stamp from the set, peel it off our acetate sheet. Now I have used this several times, but you can see it still sticks really quite well to the acetate. And again, don't pull the stamp, pull the acetate away from the stamp. That way you won't stretch the stamp too much, okay? Because the last thing you want to do is pull at the stamp, stretch the stamp, and then it won't fit on your flower properly. So just take your time and peel it gently, but more peel the acetate from the stamp than the stamp from the acetate. Okay, so I'm holding the stamp and I'm actually literally pulling the acetate. Okay, now we're just going to place this on top of here. Now if it doesn't completely match when you've stamped it, don't worry. I think I've shown you before when I did the rose, if you remember, I showed you a way of filling in any sort of little blank spaces that you end up with. So if you haven't lined your stamp up 100% accurately, please don't worry about it. It will be absolutely fine. I think that's about right. it either is or it isn't. Okay, so I'm going to ink this up and then stamp it down. You don't have to stamp it. If you really wanted to, you could leave that as it is and just die cut it. You don't have to add the stamp. If you want the sort of no lines look, don't add the stamp. It's absolutely fine. It'll look completely different, but equally as beautiful. I've done both ways and they both look fabulous. So, fingers crossed that it's hopefully about right. That's not bad. I'm quite pleased with that. So then I would die cut that out and I will use that on my card to go with my background that I've already done. Okay, now then, I've already cut my square from my base, and you'll see I've taken the middle out. That's because I'm mean and I want to keep the card because it's my favourite colour and I haven't got much left. So I'm hoping that we're getting some more at some point. So I've already done my background here, and you can see I've used, similar to what I used yesterday, different stencils, the little splat stamp. I've even used some leaves down here. There's several different stencils and stamps on that one. You can see there are some stars on it as well. So it's just a case of choose what you want and just go with that, because it will look totally different every time. I defy you to get two the same. I've done, this is the third one I've done, and they all look completely different. Primarily because I've used different colours, obviously. Yeah, that's right, Lynn. It is my favourite colours, which is why the other one that I'll show you in a second isn't. It's totally different. And I've used a totally different stencil set as well. So I'm going to add that down there. And I've added it on 3D pads just to give it a bit of height, because I do think it's worth elevating the work that you've done, because I think it makes it look a little bit more special. Okay, so this was the flower that I did yesterday, and I've used pinks and purples on this one as well, but I used pink on here rather than red. So the one I've done today is red and purple. So I'm going to put this down here. Now obviously there's no embossing folder with this set, so all I've done is I've just gone round the edge of the flower on the back with a ball tool, just to give it a little bit of shape, just to lift it off the card a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to use my large foliage. Now I told you that this one was my favourite, and I've already cut it and inked it how I want to, and I've split the branch. See here, I've split these. I always tend to cut them down because I find they're just a very versatile die for that, and they will split down beautifully, and you can use them in numerous ways that way. You can use the full branch if you want to, but I just think this is a way of making them look a little bit different. Okay, so then I'm just going to place my leaves where I think they look best. And I'm changing the colour of the card as well, so that they're different coloured leaves, because, you know, leaves aren't one shade of green, are they? And you can see I've put a little bit of shape on these as well. So again, I've just gone over the back with a ball tool and just given it a little bit of different shape so that it looks a little bit different. And then I shall just glue these down with 3D glue gel so that they sit proud, and that's your card. And I just think, although it hasn't got an embossing folder, I still think it looks amazing, because it's the definition that you get on the actual stenciling. The detail on the stenciling is, in my opinion, second to none. So that was the one that I'd got planned to do and put together today, and then this was the other one that I did just as something a little bit different. So again, I've used different stencils, different stamps. This one comes from the Rose set, I think, but I just love this. I think this is such a cute little stamp, and it just says so much for me. And then this is the daisy corner that I did, and I've just used yellows, and again, the yellow and the blue for the green, for the leaves, and I've just used yellow, a little bit of early sunrise and a little bit of cobblestones just to give that a little bit of shading. And again, I've used one of the leaf stencils in the background, a flower stencil, the little shapes that I used on today's card, so that this little shape here is in the background on here, and then I used a different texture stamp in the background. So they look completely different, and once this one's done as well with this flower, that's going to look completely different as well. But it's the same idea, it's the same principle, and it's just a way of just have a play. Really enjoy the stamps and the stencils that you've got, and just go with it. Just pick a couple of colours or 3 colours even, and just go with it, because it's just such a satisfying thing to do. It's brilliant, and you really will have fun. You'll enjoy it. So I shall look forward to seeing all your stamped and stenciled backgrounds in the group in the next couple of days, and I hope you have as much fun as I've had making these ready. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. See you all soon. Bye now.